This podcast is brought to you by the Association for Coaching, an international professional body which is advancing coaching in business and society worldwide. I am Maxine Bell, a coach, writer and artist, and your host for the latest AC podcast series, Let's Make Coaching Creative. In this series, I'm having inspirational conversations with innovative, passionate coaches who use various creative tools with their clients. They will share their journeys, insights and expertise currently so relevant in a changing, uncertain world. We hope this series opens your eyes to new ways of coaching that allow both us and our clients to bring together all that we are. My first guest in this podcast series is Anna Sheather. Anna is an executive coach, coach supervisor, and author of the book Coaching Beyond Words, Using Art to Deepen and Enrich Our Conversations. Welcome, Anna.
Thank you, Maxine. It's lovely to be here.
So how would you define art-based coaching?
So I think art-based coaching is the creation of an image. It isn't about creating masterpieces. It isn't about creating, fantastic pieces of work that go up on the wall. It is about self-expression. So it's about any image a client creates that has meaning to them. It's almost the externalization of their internal selves through the visual image. And that could be through drawing, it could be painting, it could be through collage, it could be through creating three-dimensional sculptural images with clay or anything, or it could be a mixed media type approach. So that's what art-based coaching is. It's the visual image, an internalized expression being externalized into a visual image that means something to the client.
Now, my introduction was very brief, so could you tell the listeners a bit more about yourself, your journey into coaching and how that became art-based?
Yeah, absolutely. So I became a coach back in 2006 and set up my coaching practice right at the beginning of 2007. But before that, I was in the financial services industry, I was in strategic consulting, I was doing all sorts of very pure business-based, very logical, linear, analytical type work. And I came across coaching as part of my moving out of mainstream employment, if you like, and moving into the consultancy space. And I was helping a strategic consultancy move into board level facilitation and facilitation around fast growing companies and things like that. And whilst I was helping to develop and grow that, there's often spaces in between. And I found myself helping out in their outplacement arm. They had this executive outplacement arm. And I really loved working with people in a one-to-one space and holding that space for somebody as they explored what was really important to them in terms of their career. And that's what sparked my interest in coaching. And I did the usual, I think, at that time, which was explore life coaching, which was probably the most well-known form of coaching at that time. And then found the courses at Henley Business School. And I decided to qualify as a coach with Henley Business School, made the decision very bravely or foolhardy, I don't know which now, it's absolutely fine because I'm still here, made the decision to launch my own practice back in 2007 on a bit of a wing and a prayer. And I've loved it ever since. So it's a lovely thing to do. It's an amazing thing to do. And I love my coaching work. And that's kind of morphed into supervision as well. So I'm a qualified supervisor and it's fantastic working with other coaches and helping them develop their practices. It's very exciting. I really enjoy it. But the art-based thing came up sort of around about, I suppose, about 2014, 2015, because one of the reasons I wanted to set up my own coaching practice, I think like many people, you get to a stage in life when you want to do your own things and you don't necessarily want to be sort of hemmed in by what was then the real 9 to 5, going into an office every day, having very little time to kind of explore the things that are really important to you as a person. And one of those things for me was creativity. And I was really starting to get to a stage where I wanted to spend time learning how to draw much better, developing my painting skills. And I wanted to be able to access kind of the courses that were out there for adults. And a lot of that was during the week, which I couldn't do because, the restrictions of normal working life. So my coaching practice enabled me to start to do that. And I never forget this, it was the January of 2016, actually, where I had started to become really kind of disconnected and a bit frustrated with my coaching practice, and was wondering whether I needed to train as an art therapist, because my creative side was really developing and growing. But I was holding my coaching practice, my executive coaching practice, very separately from that. And I felt there was very much there's my creative me, and then there's my business me. And actually, I wasn't bringing the whole of myself into my coaching practice. And I put the quote in the book, and my supervisor said to me, they just said, "You know what, Anna?" He said, "The great thing about what we do is we can put our energy anywhere we want to." And it was my absolute aha moment. And I feel the tingling sensation even now. And it was like, oh, for goodness sake, I just need to put art and coaching together. I'm sure I can do that. And that's what I did. So in 2016, I took the leap and said, right, I've got a website. I'm going to see if other coaches are really interested in this. I'm just going to go out there and see what happens. So I still have my mainstream executive coaching practice. And I now also have art and coaching. So I've got these two things, and they're slowly coming together. So the executive coaching practice and using art and executive coaching is something that's really starting to develop and grow now. That's how I've got to where I am today.
It's becoming a theme I think, with thinking about creativity and coaching, how people are bringing together the whole of themselves in that arena. You know, I'm talking to a lot of coaches that use other methods, and it's just really interesting to hear that's exactly the same experience for you, of bringing the two different compartments or different elements of yourself together in one space. So a very bold decision. So well done.
Thank you. And I think, I always say to my coaches that work with me as a supervisor, is that actually it's a bit of a cliche in coaching now, but we coach at our best when we coach from where we are and who we are, and we bring in our real selves into that space. And I think that's really important. My practice has it's enriched my practice enormously and really helped me to build my confidence as a coach by being whole, if you like, in that space. So
yeah, that makes sense. With your art, obviously you decided to use art in your coaching. I mean, did you just dive in with it and experiment? What was the process of developing that?
Yeah, so you may imagine from just hearing my kind of business background is that I'm very keen on using things that I personally really believe in, and I've done the research into and have tried out and experienced, so that I know that what I'm bringing to my clients is something that has a very credible background. You know, I feel really confident in its efficacy and its appropriateness to the coaching space, and particularly in the executive coaching space. And I work with academics and scientists and IT people and finance people. So whatever I bring in, I personally have to be able to explain to them. So I did quite a lot of research. My first port of call, I suppose, if you like, was art therapy, because I was starting to think, should I be an art therapist? And I came across two art therapists that I found particularly insightful. One was Kathy Malchiodi, and she talks about expressive art therapy. So she brings all the arts together, whereas I focus mainly on the visual arts. And she talks about the two aspects of art therapy. One is the art in and of itself, the process of creating art is a healing process. And we see that a lot. Whenever we think of art therapy, we probably predominantly think of that in terms of art therapy, where people create art, and through the expressive process of art and making art, they slowly start to heal themselves. But there's another part of art therapy, which is where the art itself is, and I hate to use the word symbolism because I think symbolism doesn't really explain it at all. I suppose I'd like to talk about it in terms of expressive communication, that actually the art itself is a visual communication. It's an embodied communication that actually accesses those deeper parts of ourselves, and those parts of ourselves that are in need of recognition. And that's the aspect of art therapy that I really followed. And through that, I then came across this other art therapist called Liesl Silverstone. And she's a person, or she was, because she's no longer with us, she's a person-centered art therapist. And that was really enlightening. And I've based my own coaching practice very much around her ideas and her frameworks. And you'll see her cited in a lot of the things I talk about in the book, for example. And in person, we as coaches are predominantly person-centered. So Carl Rogers' approach to the ways of being as a human being in the helping space is very much the way of being in a coaching space. So seeing art therapy and the person-centered approach so closely aligned, and she actually started to talk about the fact that actually, and so did Carl Rogers, is that this way of being isn't just about therapy and counselling. It's actually about the growth and development and fulfilment and enrichment of us as human beings. And therefore, it made absolute sense to bring art and coaching together under a person-centred banner. I mean, it was a no-brainer. So that was my first part of research. And as part of that, I also engaged an art therapist to work with me so I could really experience it for myself. And that was really important and really helped me even more understand how I could create a coaching space and how I would hold the space as a coach with that. But I also looked at other areas. So communication and art and the visual language is something as human beings we have done for tens of thousands of years. And we have always used the visual image, whether it's a two-dimensional image or a three-dimensional image, as a way of expressing ourselves, a way of understanding ourselves, being able to communicate and understand how we fit in the world that we live in. And I've never forgotten an exhibition I went to at the British Museum back in 2013 that actually showed these amazing artworks, if you like, from human beings from over 40,000 years ago, including, three-dimensional work. They showed you the materials that they use and kind of the paints that they created that they actually become fossilized, and the colors. So we've used that and we use it today. You think about how much visual imagery we post in social media. We're only interested in photographs, and we and it really tells what we want to say. It's really expressive, and the things that we hook into are the photographs or the videos. All of this visual imagery is so important to us because it tells us so much more than words do, and it does it instantaneously. So again, art and communication is such a powerful part of us as human beings. So that was the second area of research. So I've done a lot more around that, and it's fascinating. It really is. And it's sad in a way that we forget that, and that we kind of put it into the part of our lives that is to do with the lighter side of life, and we don't actually kind of think about it as a really important part of communicating in the business world. So it is sad that we don't use visual communication and really look at the benefits of communicating visually as part of our holistic way of looking at problems, explaining things, delving deeper into the issues at hand or the strategic directions we want to go in. And I think that is it's a shame, but I think we will get there. I think particularly in the climate that we're in, where our key problems of today, world problems of today, are going to need some really fast solutions that mean we haven't got the time to unpick the problem, and we've got to really just go for it. And I think what that does then is bring me to another area of research that I looked at, which was our brain. And I felt very much strongly that there must be some neurological explanations as to why art is so powerful, and why does it connect so deeply to us? Why does it allow us to bring forward the hidden that's within us, or the things that we find really difficult to explain in words? Why does being able to create it in the visual image allow us to then suddenly find those words and really connect with what we're experiencing, that enables us to have those aha moments and the ability to then really do something positively with the real truth of something? And that's when I started to look at the brain, and in particular what they call the bilateral hemispheration of it, which is the right-left hemisphere of the brain. And Ian McGilchrist's wonderful book called Master and His Emissary, which really looks at why we have two hemispheres that are not directly connected. They're connected through the massive corpus callosum nerve cable at the base of the brain. And the fact that these two parts of our brain actually pay attention to the world in slightly different ways. And it's the right hemisphere, which is silent, relies on the left hemisphere to speak on its behalf. And often the left hemisphere just hasn't got the words for what the right hemisphere is experiencing. And the right hemisphere can communicate very easily through the visual image. It can also do it through metaphor, it does it through music, it can do it through poetry. And therefore, by using art, we are actually enabling us to use our whole brain, which is amazing. You know, we can quieten our left hemisphere down. So that's where mindfulness comes in. I've done a lot of mindfulness training to help with all of that. We can quieten down the left hemisphere, which feels that it's right most of the time, always kind of interferes, feels it's got the words when it hasn't, and it will come up and tell us stories. And there's lots of lovely research, really good neurological research that you can explore around all of that. And if you quieten our left hemisphere down, it enables us then to access our right hemisphere, and it can come to the fore. And therefore, when we're creating our visual imageries, what we're doing is allowing our right hemisphere to communicate. And often we may not know what that is. And it's only through connecting with that, giving ourselves a space to explore our imagery and talk about our imagery, that we start to find the words, and the left hemisphere can give us the right words, if you like, for what the right hemisphere really wants to tell us. And that's how it all links together. And I mean, I've done tons of research, and it's a constant area of exploration. It's a lovely area to explore. It's very exciting and very interesting. But it gives you a flavour of kind of what's sitting behind my practice.
Yeah, it makes sense what you say, though, because we've all been in situations where we felt some emotions inside us that we haven't been able to verbalise. And there's sometimes has felt for myself that this kind of battle going on of I can't quite say what I mean. And I've worked with young people, so I've used creativity, always had some felt tip pens with them, and they sometimes don't have the vocabulary. So with us, I'll get them drawing a picture, and like you say, through that picture, the language, inverted commas, comes through whatever's on their heart, on their mind is expressed. So yeah, so I think I totally agree with you. I think we can all relate to that.
Yeah, I think so. And if you think about our clients, as well as ourselves, there's a number of different kind of areas where words are just not enough. They really aren't enough. One is that, as you've just said, you've got a sense of something. You know, your knowing self has a feeling, a sense of something, and it's really frustrating not to be able to kind of connect with that. You can tell what it isn't, but you can't say what it actually is. And of course, until you can say what it actually is, you can't do anything with it. And a lot of people get stuck in these loops, don't they? Because they can't break out of that. So that's one area where art is phenomenally powerful. There's another area where often there are things that are hidden to us that actually need to be recognised. And over the years, we've just kind of park them. You know, we just crack on with the day-to-day, we get on with what we should be doing, what we ought to be doing, and there's a part of us that's been buried that actually is a really important part of us. And you'll often find people starting to return to things as they get older. But actually, those things that are hidden to us are really important for us to connect with again, so that we are whole in terms of being able to make those decisions in our lives and work in a way that, again, is the real truth of us, is our real true narrative of us. And again, art has a really uncanny way of bringing hidden stuff that people just look at their images and start exploring their images and just say, goodness me, I'd completely forgotten about that. Or I didn't realise that was what I was really feeling about that. And again, that's really powerful. And I think, so you've got that sense of awareness, you've got what's hidden to us, but there's another area where art is also really important, and that's when things are really complicated. So there are times when words, having a verbal conversation with somebody, and they're trying to hold in that space a very complicated situation. It might be complicated emotionally, it might be complicated situationally, it might be holding lots of conflicts within it in terms of values or different views and opinions, or you're trying to hold something organizationally that's very complex. And actually being able to express that into a visual image space and hold all of that complexity outside of yourself into an image really is it just opens up and unlocks and makes it so much easier for people to work with what they are experiencing and wanting to explore and resolve. So it has 3 really powerful communication spaces where words just do not cut it. They just don't help. And we need to have that other space, that other way of communicating that then allows this whole communication space to work. So I'm, as you can hear, I'm really passionate about it and I really believe in it.
From what you're saying, it sounds like images can give information faster.
Yeah, much faster.
Because you could have hours of conversations. Anyone that's ever had therapy, sometimes you can take years to find something. But I know from my friends who are art therapists and music therapists that they can get to something very quickly, and it's the same in the coaching space, isn't it? That
absolutely.
So the impact's greater.
Yeah, and clients are really surprised by how quickly they get to that core issue. And again, it's not only is it fantastic for the client because, they can really start working on the areas that they want to work on and really make progress very quickly. But if you think about working in the corporate space as coaches, we are often time limited in terms of what we are able to offer our clients in terms of coaching time. And therefore, if you've got a way of working with somebody that really maximizes the potential of that limited time, that's fantastic for the client. It's fantastic for the organization. It's financially, amazing. And also it's a fantastic measure of success because with the visual image, you've got something very tangible right at the very beginning, and somebody can instantly go back to how they were feeling right at the very beginning just by connecting with their image, plus the fact they'll have imagery right at the end of their program, and therefore it's going to be very easy to measure success. So again, the speed of it is phenomenal for clients, but it's also got this really practical side. For me, using art is a no-brainer. Yes. But I'm sure there's lots of people out there thinking, well, I couldn't do that, and surely I couldn't bring that to my clients. And, there's all these barriers that we're going to put up to say, no, I can't work that. It's all right for Anna. She does art. She's done all the, that's fine. That's okay for her, but I couldn't do it.
Yes, but that maybe that's a kind of a good way in to go into some of the myths that people might have about art-based coaching. Like, do you have to be an artist? Do your clients have to be able to draw? Do you want to go into that and tell us a bit more about that?
Absolutely. I mean, it does make me smile. But I remember when I started off on this road, it's what drove me into the research was, what my client's going to say when I start telling them that I do art-based work? Are they going to think less of me, that I'm not this credible financial services background, strategic consulting background? All of a sudden, I've got this art in my life. And it's really interesting, how we do put these barriers and myths up around it. And I think the first place to start with anybody who's really interested in working in this way is start with your own art story and just start to be curious about your own stories that you're putting up around using art potentially in your own practice, and what barriers you might be putting up and why might you be putting up those barriers? Where's that come from? There's a lot of kind of perceptions that we develop over time from our early childhoods around our own creativity and whether or not we're artists, but also art in itself. It polarizes people. There are people that look at art and think it's something children do. It's playful. My clients would think, this is not a serious method of working with them, and they'll really kind of think it's less of me because this is a fluffy way of working. So we've got that part of art, and then we've got the other part of art, which is it's some rarefied, high net worth, very elitist, where only people like Tracy Emin or John Constable or, whoever your art kind of heroes might be, or the people that you kind of look at as artists. And that can be very alienating. And I think, that doesn't do us any service in this space where we are, where we're saying this is actually an integral part of us. We can express ourselves through art and creating visual imagery, and we can all do that. So the first myth is you don't have to be an artist. So I think as coaches, we have to be really open to our creativity, and our creativity could be anything. It doesn't have to be painting and drawing and sculpting. It could be baking. It could be making things in the garden, having fantastic gardening. Our creativity could be whatever it is that's really important to us. But we do have to be open to creativity. I think that's important. Our clients don't have to be artists. I have clients that range from I've had the head of research of a professional organisation. I've had the head of finance. I've had IT director getting involved. I've had all sorts of traditional executive coaching clients, if you like, that I have used art-based coaching with to unlock and break through and make those changes that they're really looking for. And they've all embraced it. They've all said, okay, they're a bit kind of worried about being judged. But once they understand how it works and that it isn't a judge space and there's no right or wrong, it's just expressing yourself, that actually they've really embraced it and they've enjoyed it. And I think that's the other lovely thing about it. It is a joyful space to work. Even though we're working with really serious things, it's a joyful, playful space to work and very powerful. So I think that's the kind of the key thing is around that is you don't have to be an artist, but you do, as I said, be open to creativity, and you'll have to know your materials really well if you're taking materials out to clients. And again, I think I've had comments like, we couldn't use this in the boardroom. I've worked with clients in their offices and they've got all of these amazing glass offices. And if my organisational clients saw me working with the coachees in that way, they wouldn't think we were doing any serious work. And of course, that isn't the case. I mean, you have trust in your clients that you're working with. And if you're choosing to introduce an art-based approach or any other creative approach, then they will trust you as long as you can explain it, explain how it works, all those kinds of things. That's part of your credibility and your confidence in working that way. And, if your organizational client sees amazing results in the clients that you're working with, then clearly they are not going to have any problem at all about you working in the way that you work. So these myths are myths, and they're all kind of centered around our own art stories and our own insecurities and our own perceptions of art and artists and our own creativity. So yeah.
It makes me think as well of a kind of story that's come up through all the different people that I'm interviewing for this series, is that they're predominantly women using creativity at the moment. There are a couple of men that I'm found, so it's not deliberate that I've chosen women. It's just that in the research, I've come across women doing it more. So maybe also in that story is permission for male coaches to access that, because it sounds like you have given permission for male executives as well as female executives to access that part, because it's not a gender-based thing being creative at all. So I just wondered if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I do connect with people who are really interested in art, who are men. I've come across people who do cartooning. I've come across a lovely guy working in Italy who's done a whole PhD on art-based coaching from the client's perspective. I think it's probably, I mean, if you look at coaching as a whole, it always gives a feeling that there are more women in coaching than there are men. So it might be just at the moment, because I think this is very much an emerging area. And I think it's finding people who are the more visible it becomes. I think you'll find more people will come out of the woodwork who are actually working in creative ways. And I think there's a lot of men that certainly do walking out in nature and working with nature, which is a creative space as well. So maybe through this podcast, we could invite, if you're out there and you're a chap and you're doing wonderful creative work in your coaching, get in touch with Maxine so that, we can hear from you. I mean, that would be brilliant. So,
yes, it would. That's why I wanted to bring it up, because I wanted to invite that in. It'd be lovely to hear more for male coaches that are using creative techniques as well in their coaching, because I think they're probably out there. So thank you for doing that, Anna, for that invite. And just in relation to some of the other myths, in your book you give some examples of some of the work that's been done. You've shown an example, I know, there was one I remember with I think he was called James, where you've shown the journey, the beginning, and the images are literally kind of just coloured loops almost and circles. It's not that the images have to be complicated at all. They are what they are, whatever that is happening from, you said, the right side of the brain is happening. Some of the images look like a squiggle, some are sort of quite messy, watery colour kind of things. They are what they are. They're not kind of artistic in the traditional sense of the word, are they?
No, not at all. And often the more freeing and more abstract people become in terms of their expressiveness, the deeper and often a lot more people can get from that. And the images are all kind of variations of things. Some people do like to create things that have perhaps things in them that look like something. And to them, they might call it something specific. But there isn't any way, people don't have to draw things that look like something. So they might say something is a flower. And if you're kind of observing and working alongside somebody and you don't see it as a flower at all, I mean, that's not a problem. I mean, the image is what the image is to the client. And that expressiveness is exactly that. And I have had people can't get out of their left brain. So it's the left brain that kind of says, right, I've got to draw this and it's got to look like it's got to look like. And if people are really stuck in that, what I tend to do is move out from a mindfulness kind of like where I slow everything down. So and we go into a mindfulness kind of meditative state to allow images to emerge. I get them to actually draw things in the moment. And that kind of bypasses the left brain as well, because I said, just draw it any way you like. Or if I'm finding people are trying to do something, I said, well, rather than try to create whatever it is you're trying to create, why don't you just express it as a mark as opposed to trying to draw the image? And people have found that extremely freeing. And yes, so there's no right or wrong. It is your expressed image. And some of them can be really big. Some of them can be really small. Some people have created 3-dimensional pieces of work. Some people cut out collage and put collaging from magazines in amongst, they could paint, it could be pencil, it could be wax crayons, it could be charcoal, it could be anything. And I use a mix of materials so people can express themselves exactly how they want to and not are limited by what they might have to hand. So yeah, it's a really freeing process. And I think that's why clients, once they start to understand how it works, by the time you've got into the, the second or third session, they're kind of like, so when are we going to do some art then, Anna? Can we do some art around this? And they're off and they're with it, it's very confidence building. So
I was also thinking that how many times I've sat in meetings doodling, mark making. So already in that process of doing whatever it is I'm doing for that doodling, but I'm sure many people out there have done the same thing where they've sat with their pad and doodled something. In a way, it's already happening, isn't it? That right brain activity.
Absolutely. And there's a piece of research out there actually that says that when you doodle, it actually enables you to concentrate more on what's going on.
Yes. Yeah. It was a technique I used when I was a teacher briefly, with a very restless student. Once I gave him a pencil and he doodled, he was paying full attention. It was amazing. I was shocked by the result. Yeah. So that's really good to hear. I was thinking, you've been talking about the fact that the art-based coaching can take you deeper. Do you contract with clients about the issue if something deeper comes up, maybe some trauma or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the contracting process we know it's really important for coaching anyway, but for art-based coaching, you have to add in a few extra bits and pieces. So as I said earlier, art has this very uncanny way of unlocking things. So it's really important that clients are aware that could happen. It can also be quite an emotional process because it unlocks in that deeper space. We're connecting to our emotional selves. People can become quite tearful. So it's also important for people to be aware that they might have quite a strong emotional response to things. And that if ever they start to feel uncomfortable with what's coming up, with how they're feeling, that they can stop at any time and we can just hold the space and then they can choose what they want to do with that. So it's really important to be absolutely open about what could happen with an art-based coaching session. And with regards to trauma, being trauma aware is something I think all coaches need to be, because it can come up. Because art therapy is renowned for being a powerful way of healing trauma. So it is possible that in a coaching session, it could unlock traumatic memories that have actually been locked away, or indeed areas that a client may have done work on before and doesn't need to go back to, or is not ready to connect with. And if that happens, it's about knowing your role as a coach in any coaching space, really, about how to hold that space if trauma emerges. And that's a whole space of education that I think all coaches need to. I do run masterclasses with Jules Vaughan-Smith on trauma and art-based coaching to help coaches kind of understand when trauma might be present and why, and how to hold that as a coach, because we are not there to heal trauma. That is a therapeutic space and needs to be held by people who know how to work with trauma. But coaching can support a healing space by tapping into the healthy self. And if people want to find out more about that, there's some blogs on my website exploring trauma and art-based coaching. But there's also Jules Vaughan's wonderful book, Coaching and Trauma. And again, I think we're going to have links and things available on site. And I'll pop that in there. I think that's an important book for people to look at.
Yeah, thank you. That's really useful. I was also thinking that our own self-awareness, and maybe this is where the supervision comes in, as coaches is really important. So, I've got a background of working with a lot of people who have trauma. And so for me, when big emotions come up, even as a coach, I'm not uncomfortable with it. I don't feel fearful of it. But some coaches won't have had those experiences. So just being aware of our limits as well and where we're comfortable, I think also is important in that space.
And I agree with you, supervision is so important because we can get, there's a model, a Franz Rupert model, which Jules Vaughan-Smith goes into in a lot of detail, and you can find lots of information about that on the internet. And they talk about the survival self. And one of the things that can happen in a coaching space is our survival self as the coach, and the client's survival self can get entangled, and that's when coaching really starts to fail. And understanding ourselves in terms of our own trauma, and I think it's really interesting. One of the things that fascinated me about learning about trauma was that we all do have a level of traumatic experiences and trauma in our lives. Yes. And it isn't all about those life-threatening situations that cause PTSD, or if there's you've had horrific childhood of abuse and things like that. We actually all have some degree of trauma, and I found that really interesting. And being aware of being able to recognise when our survival self is starting to play out, I think is really important. And certainly supervision can help with that. But I think supervision is. I've always had supervision. I've always been in supervision right from the day of qualification, and it's a fantastic space to understand the things that we're missing because we've got in it, and we're in it with our clients. And art-based coaching, you can get very in it with your client, and your boundaries can start to be tested a little bit. And it's one of the reasons I always say to people, if you want to work in this way, you have to make sure that you are bounding your art-based exercises in a coaching framework. So we aren't saying to people, draw an image of how you're feeling today, because you've opened up the door to anything and you don't know what's going to come in. But you could say, for example, let's explore an image of how you're feeling about whatever the coaching subject is today, and then you're bounding it within a coaching framework. And I think that's really important as part of that. But yeah, supervision is really important too. I mean, very important.
Yeah, thank you. That's really important information about the trauma. I think that's going to be really helpful. So thank you for sharing that. And you're a coach supervisor, so do you use art with supervision as well?
Yeah, I mean, I use it all the time in supervision. I mean, I think coaches are so well known for wanting to do things differently and are open to absolutely anything, really, in terms of being able to explore themselves and their clients and their practice. So, yeah, so I have to say my supervision is predominantly art-based. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
And again, it's a really powerful space. It does exactly the same things for coaches that it does for our clients, in that it particularly holding the complexity of a coaching relationship and exploring what's going on in that coaching relationship and how we are in that relationship and how our clients are. And then the systems that, we all think about the systems that come into play within these coaching dynamics, and holding complexity is a powerful space for art in the supervision, as well as understanding ourselves just as coaches.
That's fantastic. I think you might get a few calls after that.
Very welcome.
Yeah. Now, your passion for this is very evident in our conversation, but you have a lot now of things on your website, and you do workshops, and you're also creating a diploma in art-based coaching. Would you like to share a bit more about that for our listeners so they know, if they're interested, where to find out more?
Yeah, I'd love to. I mean, yeah, so, back in 2016, when I decided, well, of course, I've just got to bring art and coaching again together. And why didn't I think about that before? I actually started right at the very beginning saying, right, I'm just going to share this with coaches. It's that kind of almost naive kind of, this is so exciting, everybody's got to know about it type thing. So I've been running workshops for quite a while. And what I discovered is that there is so much out there that's so exciting about working in this way. And coaches want more. They want a deeper experience of this. So I do run sort of introductory sessions and mini programs for people who kind of just want to try it out and explore it, a bit curious about it, or maybe want to look at it a little bit kind of more and start to use it. But I have come across now more and more coaches that really love to go the in-depth exploration into what it's all about. And so I made the decision to I thought I was going to do a certificate, but when I started talking to people, everybody wanted a diploma. So the diploma in art-based coaching was born, and it's a wonderful thing to do, because I've been able to bring together all these different aspects, things that I haven't shared with coaches before, that I've got, under my own hat, if you like, in terms of the work I'm doing. And it's going to be based on the Association for Coaching's diploma requirements. So it is an all singing, all dancing diploma, and I'm keeping my fingers and toes crossed that it's going to get accredited by the AC. And my plan is to get it in for accreditation this summer, and then we're running it next year, starting in May next year. So and it's all on the website, so if people are really interested. But I thought what I'd say is I'll just give people a bit, because it's quite a lot of work for everybody who wants to join in. But I hope it is going to be a really exciting and interesting space to work in, because you've got to have, for the diploma, 80 hours of I think it's 80 hours of class-based work. And anyway, so we've got this massive amount of class-based work. So we've got 4 modules, in-person modules, run over the period of 6 to 9 months. So you start off with like the foundation module, and that's literally giving you everything you need about the framework, the way I work, all the things you need to do to really get started. So it's 3 days of immersive, practical, art-based coaching. And we introduce the art and the brain and all those kind of things. Module 2 is where it starts to get really interesting. So I start to look at things like art and the body and working with the body. We look at art and imagination. We look at things like making sense of and meaning, and why is that really important, and the research around why that's really important and how art really connects into that. We look at art, mindfulness and well-being, and we look at art and playfulness. So it's a lovely module of exploring the vast, this wealth of kind of areas that we can use art in that are really helpful for our clients. Then module 3 is advanced practice, and they're 3 separate days. So day 1 is all about art and in group coaching and how you can use art in the group coaching space. Day 2 is a whole day on trauma and art-based coaching. And day 3 looks at how art and other coaching modalities come together. So if you're a Gestalt coach, for example, how might you be able to use art in a Gestalt space? Because I'm person-centered, but it doesn't mean to say we can't use art in other areas. So we look at existential coaching, or we might look at, for example, solutions-focused coaching is a fantastic area to use art in. So we really start to explore how you can expand out art into other modalities. And then module 4 is 2 days of consolidating practice, so that you really start to feel confident about developing your own practice. And then running through the whole of those modules, we do all the standard stuff of co-coaching, observing coaching. You're going to have a learning log. You're going to keep a coaching log, because you've got to have all your coaching hours to ensure you can get the diploma. But we're also going to be doing, which I think is really lovely, is creative reflective practice. So right from day 1, we're going to give you a journal, and within that journal you're going to be creating and bringing art and reflective practice together. So you're deepening not only your reflective practice, but you're also connecting with your creativity, and you're going to really start to build confidence in holding these spaces. So it's a really enjoyable, I hope, space in which to really get under the skin, if you like, of art-based coaching and the wealth and opportunities it brings to our practice. And then there's 2 written theses that have to come out of that, and obviously your learning log and your coaching log. There's also supervision dotted all the way through, so you get lots of support from me, and eventually I'm hoping that we're going to get some other more experienced art-based coaches coming on board to do that as well. It's a fantastic, I find it really exciting because I really get to share everything that I've learned with coaches and really expand it now out into a much broader area. So
and like everything you've done, you do it, you're very thorough, it's evidence-based, it's research-based, as well as all that whole creative element. So it's really impressive. And I know I took part in your webinar when you were, which you I think had via LinkedIn, which was, very inspiring. And so it is a really well thought out diploma by the sounds of it. And it also gives coaches, really sound confidence building space that they can also take when they go to find work. I guess having a diploma always helps, doesn't it? A piece of paper does help, but it's much more than a piece of paper. And I just want to add as well that, I've read your book, and I think it's a really well written book. It's not too much information. It was, for me, just looking into this, it was enough information, but very clearly written, some really lovely examples of there, and very generous of you to share, your practice in that way through the book. So, it's a very good book. So thank you for that.
And that's it. I just want everybody to really realise just this amazing way of working. Happy to share.
Or would you like to say something about your book?
Thank you, Maxine. Yes, I really enjoyed writing the book. It was a lovely way to consolidate all the research and the workshops that I was running at that time and bringing it all together. And it was also such a wonderful opportunity to be able to share it with the much wider coaching community, because not everybody wants to go on workshops, and you can read it and decide if it's for you. And I'd made it really practical. So it's not only got my research in it, which I talk about in the podcast, so it looks at art, therapy and coaching. It looks at art and communication. It will look at coaching today and how art is relevant to coaching today. But I really explain in it my actual practice. So I'll actually take you through the principles and the framework of coaching with art and the 5 steps of imaging, creating, connecting to a client's image, holding that space, working with that image, moving to coaching, and then obviously the ongoing discoveries that come out of that, and all the ways in which you do that. I talk about materials, I talk about the ethics, I talk about contracting, I talk about everything you need to get you started. So it's a lovely sharing of my practice, which I really enjoyed working. And it is peppered throughout with case studies. And there's colour images in it as well of their artwork. So you can really get to see, that thing around the kind of abstract art, which I know we talk a little bit about, and also real art and how clients work with their images and how images evolve. And you get to see, if you like, almost their beginning to end experiences of being coached using an art-based practice. So I hope it gives people a really good understanding of what I do.
Where can listeners find your book?
So you can find it on Amazon, and there's an ebook as well as like a hardback book. You can follow links on my website, and you can find it on the Routledge website as well in terms of the book. So if you just pop in Coaching Beyond Words, it will pop up quite happily on the internet, accessible to everybody. And one of the joys has been the fact that people from across the world have been reading it. And somebody, lovely person who came on a workshop, Rohit, actually sent me a photograph from India with him holding his book in front of his artwork. And I just think that's amazing. Just amazing.
Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to say to listeners before we go? Like, how can they contact you, or anything else you want to say about the art-based coaching?
It's lovely to be able to talk about it with you, Maxine, and to share kind of my passion about this. What I would say is really listen to your voice around this, really listen to your internal voices around what might be stopping you. Obviously, art-based coaching isn't for everybody. It's like all the modalities, isn't it? We tend to gravitate towards those areas that have the most interest for us. But explore it, be curious about it. And, the more confident you are with it, the more you can bring it into a whole different array of clients. Don't feel that this is for life coaching. It isn't just for life coaching. It's brilliant for life coaching. It's great for creative coaching, but it has a hugely valuable space in work-based coaching because of the complexities that come in around work-based coaching. And I just encourage you just to be curious about it. And if ever you just want to have a go, just have a go, you can always just book a session with me, and we could do an hour's art-based coaching session if you just want to try it out. So I'm very open to trying things out with people, or just chatting to people about it to understand their fears around it. It's not a problem at all. But I hope actually it's kind of, it's a joyful place to work in. It's joyful for both coach and client. And you can get a hold of me. I've got my art-based coaching website, which is artandcoaching.co.uk. I've got the Elan coaching website, which is elancoaching.co.uk. So you can get to me through either of those. I've got emails and things. I'm on LinkedIn, and it's my Elan coaching email that you would need for my LinkedIn page. And I've got an Art and Coaching LinkedIn group as well. And there's a newsletter that you can sign up to. I'm on Twitter with Art and Coaching. So there's lots of spaces to connect with me. And I'm part of the Association for Coaching membership team as well. So I'm available through the Association of Coaching kind of members site. So you can also find me through there.
Well, Anna, it's been an absolute pleasure. I think your joy and passion on this subject is very evident in our conversation. And so thank you so much for coming and joining me today.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. It's a great joy to be able to talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to another podcast by the Association for Coaching. I have been Maxine Bell. For 20 years, the AC's purpose has been to inspire and champion coaching excellence, advance the coaching profession, and make a sustainable difference to individuals, organisations and society. To find out more about the Association for Coaching and our member benefits, follow us on LinkedIn or explore our website at associationforcoaching.com. You can keep up to date with our latest podcast episodes, enjoy the wealth of digital learning offerings, and gain insights from our Coaching Perspectives magazine.